Here we are in the Mobius practice assignment folder, and what we're going to do in this video is just kind of walk you through quickly some of the items in the folder and then actually go through question by question in this practice assignment, right? So the first item is just saying that if you don't have cookies or tracking enabled in your browser, so if you shut that off, then you'll have you won't be able to access the assignment. Tracking needs to be enabled so that when you're in Blackboard and you click on a link that takes you to Mobius, then it remembers your login information and it's just passed through to Mobius, and then it's a seamless process, right? If you don't have your cookies or tracking enabled, it's going to ask you for a login, but it's not your Indiana Tech login because that's a different system. Mobius is an external system, and there's a way the two systems communicate, and for that to work properly, then you have to have this cookies or tracking enabled. So that's what this is saying. The second item is just a reference sheet that gives you some of the syntax that we're actually going to discuss in the shortly here in our video. But it's a nice kind of not really a cheat sheet. I mean, it's a reference sheet that you can have to see how to enter certain things. You know, the way you would write math or the way that math is printed in a textbook is different from one of the ways you can enter things in the system that we call Mobius, right? So definitely have this handy and read through it. It's really helpful, and it will eliminate a lot of headache. You know, you're wondering, why isn't this working? Chances are it has to do with syntax. If your math is correct, Mobius is going to hold you to a really high standard as far as syntax is concerned. All right, and then below that is the actual assignment. So I am not going to click on this since this is in an actual Blackboard course, but I have the assignment ready to go in another tab. So when you click on this, if you have your tracking enabled, you should see something like this. So you should see this, and this is called like the launch page or the property page of the assignment. And for this one, there's no time limit. The results will be recorded, so how you do on this assignment will be put back into the Blackboard gradebook, and you'll be able to see it there. You can do this as many times as possible. There's a feature called How Did I Do, which is enabled. You don't need a proctored browser. And Mobius itself, there are no restrictions, and you don't need any authorization. So you can just jump right in. As long as you're within the deadline that's posted in Blackboard, you can always access and work on this assignment. So let's get started. I'm going to hit the start button at the bottom here, and it's going to take us to our first question. Our first question, it says you're going to enter a numeric expression as text. Right, so that some of those formulas and text expressions that were in that reference sheet, that's what we will need here. Now, it's a little small on my end, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can get a better view of what I'm going to type in. So notice we have a fairly complicated fraction, right? And I'm not going to try to manipulate a fraction. I'm just going to enter it the way I see it. And since this fraction has multiple terms in the numerator and in the denominator, I'm going to have at least two pairs of parentheses, one for the top, one for the bottom. So let's open the parentheses for the top. Now, 22 to the eighth root of 22, in text, we have to switch that and use the property that any root can be written as a fractional exponent. So this is 22 and it's raised, and now we're going to use the exponent key, which is your shift 6, and they call it a caret, and then raised to what power? Well, the eighth root is the same as the 1/8 power, so it's 1 and then divided by 8. That's what it looks like as text. And then we're going to keep going. In the numerator, we have a plus and then 72 times, and then we have pi raised to the third power. Now, pi in text mode in Mobius is uppercase pi. The P is uppercase, the I is lowercase, right? And then that is raised to the third power, so I need another caret, and then that's the exponent 3. So I'm going to close that parentheses, and that takes care of the numerator. Now in the denominator, I need another pair of parentheses because I have 2 terms. So now the divide or division is indicated by that slash, right? So I guess you could say that's your forward slash, I guess. And then open the parentheses in the denominator, and then what do we have? Well, we have 21, and it's times. So we're multiplying, and I didn't mention it earlier, but yes, we have 72 times pi to the third power. So anytime there's a product in text mode, it's always safe to put the asterisk, right? It will never mark you for as incorrect if you use the asterisk, but sometimes if you don't use the asterisk, you will be marked as incorrect. So if there's multiplication and you're using text mode, use the asterisk, which is shift 8. Now let's do the E. The E is special. That E is that special number 2.71 and so forth. And it's an exponential function, really. And the abbreviation or the text version of the exponential function is exp. And then you open parentheses and put the exponent in parentheses. So here the E is raised to the -4 power. So I'm going to do -4 there. Close that. And then we have one more term in the denominator. So -47, and then close that, right? So now obviously that's a pretty lengthy expression, right? Is there any way to check? Well, there are a couple things you can do. You can at least check to see if what you've entered matches what we're seeing, right? Or what's written on the page somewhere. And there's a preview button. It's this little magnifying glass. If I click it and I look at, let me see if I can move, I can't move the preview. But if I look, I can see that it's very, very close to what's there. The only difference is, again, we can see the fractional exponent versus the radical notation. So that looks good. What's also going to be available on all your homework assignments is this How Did I Do button. The How Did I Do button will essentially give you immediate feedback to say, yep, that what you've responded with, that what you've entered is correct or not. So in this case, if I do How Did I Do, it gives me a nice green check mark, so everything is good. Let me go ahead and change something. So what if I, let's say, forgot to put the 1/8 in parentheses? Well, that's not correct. Let's verify both ways that it's not correct. If I look at the preview is giving me 11/4. Why is it giving me 11/4? Well, think about the order of operations that would be applied just to this expression that I have here. It would do the exponent before it does division. So it would say 22 to the first power, which is 22, divided by 8. So 22/8, that reduces to 11/4, right? So it does make a big difference, right? So you can see that here the preview, because we know what the answer is, right? We can see that what we've entered doesn't match the expression that's there. We don't see that 8th root. Now, in a typical homework problem, you're not going to have the answer in front of you. You're going to be working on throughout some process, and you come up with an answer, put the answer in. But what you'll be able to do is check the How Did I Do button. And that's what it says. Check your responses for this question. So let's click on it. And as we can expect it, it's not correct because we're missing the parentheses there. So let's fix that. Right. And then kind of move on, because this question has allowed me to explain a couple things like the preview button, How Did I Do button. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit and just show you, see, at the bottom of the window. So once we finish with one question, then we would hit next and go to the next one. There is a question menu that allows you to jump kind of out of order back and forth if you know what question you need to work on. Quit and save is where you could close the session but save your progress and then resume it at a later time. That will be the case on all the homework. And then once you've completed all the questions, you can hit the submit assignment button to submit it for grading, right? And we'll walk through this entire process in this video. So let's go to the next question, see what this one is. This one now, it says, okay, we're going to enter this expression. It has some trig functions in there, but notice we don't have the little text box anymore. What we have is this, I call this like a math palette, right? You have some palettes up here, some little placeholders for different things. This one has some stuff for roots and fractions and all that. This one has trigonometric and inverse trigonometric functions. This one has some fancy looking stuff here, looks like some calculus stuff. And this one I think has to do with matrices, which we'll use later on. But let's see just how to enter this, right? And this, so you can think of this as almost like 2D math, the way the math would be printed in a textbook. So let's see. So we're going to start with 22. Now it's 22 times cosine of 30. It turns out in this mode, you don't have to put the asterisk, right? You don't have to put the asterisk. We could literally type in cosine, but I just want to show you how we can get those expressions from these palettes. So let's click on the trig one and then choose cosine. And then there's a 30 inside the parentheses. Notice that this little placeholder A is already selected. It's kind of highlighted. So if I just type 30, it's going to replace the A and put the right number there. And then I have to move my cursor outside of that parentheses by hitting the right arrow. And then I'll put it looks like it's a minus, and then 30 times cosecant, and I believe that's also in our palette. Yep, there's cosecant. And then again, that little placeholder A is highlighted, and then it's a 28 there. And we can check to see if this is good, and that's great, right? So question one, we didn't have a choice, right? We had to enter stuff in text. In question two, we had to use this palette to enter our response, right? And everything's good. So let's move on to question three. This one, it doesn't say what mode of entry. This question actually allows us to choose our mode. So I'm going to start out with text. That's my preferred way because I when I'm as writing, when you're writing a lot of code for different things, it's just text. You don't work with palettes or anything like that. So let's see if we could type this one in as is. So it's 1 divided by 305, and then it's times pi. Remember, that's uppercase P, lowercase I, and then it's raised to the 4th power. So shift 6 to get the exponent or the caret, and then just put a 4 there. And let's look at our preview, and it is perfect. So I'm not even going to do the how did I do. I know that it's right. However, what I want to do is to show you that there are some questions, and not all of them will have it, but there are some questions where you can actually change from text to the palette. And you do that if you see, if this little icon isn't grayed out with that little, it's that Greek letter sigma, uppercase sigma. If you click on it, it magically changes it to the palette. And then you notice that the items here are a little bit different than in the previous one. It's almost like this palette is question specific, right? So in this case, let's see if we can type it. We can find these forms in our palette and enter it exactly like this. So the first one is a fraction. So it looks like this. When I click on it, okay, there was no choice. It was exactly that. So this is 1 over 305. And then I'm going to use my right arrow to get out of the denominator. And then I need to do pi, but the pi is raised to the 4th power. So I need to find a palette or a little placeholder that has both a base and an exponent. And that's the first one. So if I click on this, and then notice the base is selected, it's highlighted, so that's pi. and then I'm going to use my right arrow to go up to the exponent. I'm going to go to the right of the b and then delete it, and then put the actual number in this case, which is 4, right? And then I can check, and it's good. The cool thing is, if I wanted to see what the text for this would be, I could just switch it back, and it's going to take what I put in 2D mode and switch it back to, excuse me, text mode. So there you go, and that's what we had entered previously. All right, so that is correct. Let's move on. Here we're going to enter a polynomial. So I'm going to zoom back in on this one a little bit again, just so you can see. Here we do have the option to switch to 2D. I'm just going to show you, again, this is why I like the text, because I can just type things in pretty quickly. So let's go from left to right. So -1/3 minus 2/3 times x. I'm going to put my asterisk, which is shift 8, x, and then plus 2/3 times x raised to the second power, so caret 2, and then minus 2/3, there are lots of 2/3 in this one, times x to the third power. Right? Notice I didn't use any parentheses, and the reason is I am confident in my text expression. I know that the system will interpret the order of operations correctly. So I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to hit that preview button and see if what I've entered is actually what's there. Now, what's interesting with when you enter polynomials like this is it suddenly puts a whole bunch of parentheses there. But if you look at it term by term, they're identical, right? So I can see that this is correct. If you wanted to, you could try, when you get to a question that looks like this, you can do it in 2D mode. That's fine. I'm just going to do it in text. That's my preferred way. And since I have the choice, well, go with your preference, right? Sometimes you won't have that choice. All right, let's move on. Next, what do we have? Okay, a simple fraction, and we do have the choice here. You know me, I'm going to go for the text, so it's negative 131 divided by 80, and I am not even going to check this. I'm confident that it's right, so I'm just going to move on. Round this number to 4 decimal places. Well, for that, I need to get out my calculator, and I couldn't have this number prepped in advance because I didn't know the number that Mobius was going to give me, right? We're all probably, it would be really interesting if you got the exact same square root of 7,925. You're all going to get a slightly different number, but let me type this in, and then so it says to 4 decimal places, and the number of decimal places may even vary, right? Sometimes it might give you 3 or 2 or 4 in my case. So for me, I have to enter 89.0225 when I round. And you can verify this. You can check that this is the decimal approximation to that square root. Right? And then how did I do? And that's good. So I'm going to move on. Now, I'm not going to say much about the number help thing. It just really talks about the different ways you can enter numbers, sometimes in scientific notation. Sometimes if questions involve units, it gives you some hints there. But really, I just wanted to do an approximation entry. All right, so let's move on. And now it says the exact radical. Well, exact means no approximation. So don't take out your calculator. We're going to enter this square root. Now, we did this earlier, right? So we could do 165 raised to the power. If you think about it, the square root is equivalent to the 1/2 exponent. So we could do this, and I could check, and I know it would be correct. But let me show you another way that you can enter the square root. I wouldn't say it's any easier. I mean, in fact, I think you probably end up maybe typing the exact same number of keys, or maybe one more or less depending on your form. But just like how the sine function is abbreviated SIN, or the exponential function is abbreviated EXP, like we saw earlier, the square root function is also abbreviated SQ for square and RT for root. And then you put whatever number is under the root, you put it in parentheses. So like 165 is like this. And then I can check and can see that that form is also correct. If you wanted to switch, in fact, let me go ahead and switch it to the 2D mode or palette. If I wanted to do that, then here is the that I would use. So square root, and then I just put the 165 under it. How did I do? I did pretty well. And let's move on. So is the following number positive, negative, or neither? Well, you have some questions in Mobius where you're going to be required to enter an actual word, maybe even sometimes a phrase, to answer the question. Now, even though it has the quotation marks around it, you're only going to enter what's between the quotation marks. So if we look at our number, well, 1/2 is definitely a positive number, so I'm going to enter positive, and then I'm going to say, how did I do? And that is correct, right? So sometimes it's not just numbers or functions you're going to be entering. You're going to be entering text like this. And that's the correct text for question 8. Let's take a look at the next question. Oh, true or false, right? So this one, so in this true or false, we have to enter either the word true or the word false. And let's see what the statement is. The number 67 is a prime number. Yes, that is correct. You can do whatever checking you want. But yeah, 67 is a prime number. It can't be factored. The only factorization of 67, it would be 67 times 1, right? That's it. Those are the only two factors of 67. So the statement is true. So I put true, and if I'm a little doubtful, I can check. But there we go. So yeah, you have some questions where you'll be entering text and so forth. So let's see question 10. You have another type of yet another type of question where you're going to choose an answer from a drop-down list. So is the number oh, there's my little do not disturb thing. You know what? I'm going to put that back on just for now. All right, so is the number 101, is that prime or composite, right? So is 101 prime? It turns out it is a prime number as well. The number that you get might not be a prime number, right? You might have got, if you got something like 50, for instance, 50 is not a prime number. But then let's see what our options are. Yeah, so it's either prime or composite. Since 101 is prime, we're going to choose prime. And again, we can check to see, and it looks good. All right, let's keep on going. Now this one, so this question has multiple entry things, and that happens sometimes. Sometimes you might get a question that has a part A, B, C, D, E. You know, you could just go on for a while. And it can check each of the parts. So let's see what this question is. It says, find the intercepts of the equation and sketch the graph. Oh, well, we're not going to sketch the graph. Yes, I remember I took that out. So it's really just finding the intercepts, right? And I think what happened is it should show up correctly in your question. This one was just my test one, right? Okay, so enter the answers as ordered pairs. So the x-intercept, that's when your y is 0 and you're solving for x. So if I put a 0 there and I solve for x, I will end up getting 3, right? You can verify the algebra. So it means the x value is 3 and the y value is 0 for the x-intercept. Now, even though we've only partially entered our responses, we can check, you know, before going on, we could check to see, is that one correct? And that one is correct. And this one is not correct because, yeah, I haven't given an answer. All right, so let's see. Y-intercept is easier. It's the y value is 2, but because it says an ordered pair, you can't just put the number 2. You have to put the ordered pair, and the y-intercept always corresponds to an x value of 0. So 0, comma 2, and there you go. So now we can check both, and yes. So you can have multiple responses for a particular question. Sometimes you might be asked for an ordered pair. Sometimes you might be asked just for the x value or just for the y value. It all depends, right? Just don't make any assumptions about the questions, right? All right, so let's go to question 12. And this one is a matrix. In some courses, the questions will use a lot of matrices. So how do we enter a matrix? Well, basically a matrix, you can think of it as a grid, and this grid has 2 rows and 2 columns. So this is called like a 2 by 2 matrix. And that's, you'd get your matrix palette here. So if I click on it, it has some of the common ones, like this is a 2 by 1, this is a 1 by 2, this is a 2 by 2, this is a 3 by 3. If you have a matrix that has dimensions that are not any of these, then you can specify the numbers. So let me show you like how you would use this. So it's 2 rows, 2 columns, because that's what we have here, and then do insert. And then, so you can see it has these placeholders, just 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'd go through and like select each of the placeholders and enter what we see on the screen there. So let's see, we have negative 14 times the cosine, I get my cosine function there, of 5x. So the 5x has to be in parentheses. And then I'm going to keep hitting the right arrow until I get to the next entry, and I'm going to delete the 2 and then enter what I have here. So it's 6. Now remember, with the E, as I was saying, the E is that EXP. So EXP, notice everything like that, it was saying, the reason why it's highlighted here is because at this point it doesn't know what this means. But once I put the P there, it's like, now I know what it is, right? And then parentheses, and then 9x. And notice the parentheses there is highlighted because it's saying that, okay, this is fine, but it's not complete yet. It's not complete until you close it. So you have things like those little yellow highlighters. You're saying, warning, we're not quite sure what this means. Or things that are in green is like, okay, that's fine, but you have to close it. So it's like these little, it's guiding you through the process, because again, it's a very, very precise language. All right, next up, this entry, well, that one's easy. That's a -5, and then this one's an 8, right? So that's how you would enter this, and we can check. Let's see, how did I do? I did great. All right, so I think we have a couple questions left. Let's keep going. And what is this one? Okay, so inequalities, right? So, it takes a very sophisticated system to be able to grade inequalities correctly, like especially inequalities that represent the union of what we call disjoint intervals. So that's stuff that you do with your interval notation with the U. That's a very specific set operation. So it turns out for this one, so this part of the set, if you will, it's all values of x less than or equal to -7/5. So to do that in interval notation, open parentheses, and then -infinity, we literally just type in the word, well, we put a negative sign and then type in the word infinity like this. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. So infinity, and then comma, and then -7/5. And then because of that equal sign there, right, the -7/5 is included in that part of the interval. And if it's included, then we have to use square brackets to close it, right? And then let's do union. And then this says strictly greater than negative 4/5. So the negative 4/5 is not included. So we put a parentheses, negative 4/5, comma, and then it goes to positive infinity. And then again, we just type in the word infinity. And if you notice here, some questions will give you some pretty specific information in terms of how you enter certain things, right? Because again, this type of interval, although it's really easy to write by hand, it's not something that's so easy that an automated system like this can check for accuracy. So that's why we have to be very specific. So I think we've gotten everything there. And then let's see what the preview says for something like this. That'd be curious. Yeah, it can't really represent it. That's interesting. But we have the how did I do, and that is correct. Yeah. So like I said, sometimes when your answer might be really complicated, the preview might not show anything, whereas the how did I do will always be your friend. All right, so then let me zoom back out and then go to, I think, or this is our last question. All right, and then this one, it's enter the following expression. And here we have a choice. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start with the text. For me, text just seems to work faster. Maybe it's just a matter of experience. So let me switch to text entry. And then I'm going to zoom in and again, just show you how I would type this and not overuse parentheses. So this is -3 times, that's my shift 8, x to the, which is my shift 6 to the 4th power. So that's the first term, plus 13 times the ln, and it does know the ln, right? That's our natural log of, now I can't type xy. Why? Because xy is not a single variable. It represents the product of two variables. So I have to indicate the correct operation, right? It's x multiplied by y. So I'd have to do that and then close parentheses and then do plus 17 times. And now I have x to the y. So x to the y. And then finally plus 2 times y to the 3rd power. Right? I don't know about, I just feel like if I were to do this in the 2D mode, it would take me that much longer. And yes, I have a lot of experience typing this in with text, but I think with practice, right, and you're likely going to get a lot of practice because there's a lot of Mobius homework ahead. Right? Not overwhelmingly so, but enough that you can get practice with the text and not rely on shifting back and forth or relying on the 2D. And just remember that there will be questions where you won't have a choice of entry. Well, let's just check. This is our last check and see, and everything looks good. So now, notice my next button is grayed out, and that's because we've gotten to the end of this assignment. And so what are we going to do? Well, we would like to submit it. So I'm going to hit submit. And it says, yeah, 15 out of 15, 100%. And that's good. But it turns out that if you wanted to see everything, like if you wanted to see all the questions that you've answered, what you entered, and then what the correct answers are, or each answer is, then you can hit this view details button. Hit view details and it prints everything. So this was what we just worked through, right? Different types of questions, different methods of entry, and that's what we did. So nice kind of summary of the assignment. If you wanted to print something like this, you could just hit the print button, and what it would do is it will bring up the print dialog, and you can save it as a PDF. I'm not going to do that, but yeah, that's basically a quick relatively quick, right? Just shy of 35 minutes showing you Mobius, how to utilize some of the features, and just to make it a little bit easier for you to get used to this system if you've not used it before. And even if you've used it before, maybe you picked up a little tip here or there in this video that would make your work even more efficient and also more accurate, right? So no losing sleep over Mobius. So now it's your turn to try the practice assignment, and good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.